thing you have to start grappling with is if you can agree, whether you're Republican, Democrat, whoever, whatever party you claim to be or don't claim to be from any party, 90% plus are going to agree death and illness are the most profitable industries on earth.
Welcome back to the Professor Penn podcast. This is episode number 198, coming to you on Thursday night, April 17th, 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're broadcasting from the big room at Free People Radio, coming to you from Minneapolis, Minnesota, the belly of the beast. The belly of the beast, where I personally suffer from communism in the upper Midwest. Very glad to be back with you. It's been a pretty fractious couple of weeks. A lot of heavy things have gone down, and we're going to change gears tonight. And I want to say to all the Republican Party officers and elected officials who watch this, I want to thank you for watching. Everybody knows how I feel personally about my own politics, but I do believe in unity. I do believe in bringing our party together. And any of you are welcome here to come into this studio and contend with me, where you'll be treated with respect, with listening. I'm a get along kind of a guy. In fact, I would say unity is going to require work from all of us. And in that spirit, I have today a guest, someone that I know just for a handshake and a smile, not a friend of mine, not even an associate, someone who I've met. In fact, I remember the first time I met. It's Phil Parrish. Phil Parrish coming into the studios today from Kenyon, Minnesota. Phil is a declared candidate for the governor of Minnesota, a race that will be won or lost in 2026. Phil, welcome.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. I'm very happy you asked me to come. I'm looking forward to talking about what we're planning and a little bit about how to get to know me and things you can turn to find out more about me.
I remember when we met. Do you remember when we met?
Yeah, I remember well. I was coming to the state convention to do help with some endorsing, and I had a good friend that connected me up with Royce White, and Royce and I had connected via social media prior to that, and I started kind of chiming in on X, now X, and got to know each other a little bit, and then I was very happy to be a part of kind of helping him across the finish line at the endorsement convention. So that
He
was
won
great.
that endorsing
Yes, he
convention,
did. Yes,
didn't he?
Yep.
On the first ballot.
Yep.
It's one of my more fond political memories.
Yep.
And it might be my only fond political memory so far.
This could be true.
There's
Yeah.
been a lot of,
Yeah.
for those of you who are out of state, you know this, we have a lot of fractious, actually animosity here in Minnesota amongst Republicans.
Mm.
And we're trying to sort that out. And I'm going to tell you, it's the same thing, whatever state you're in, the same thing's going on in the Democrat Party.
Yeah.
The exact same. Do you see that, Phil, that the same thing's going on with the Democrats?
Yeah. So that's a good lead into a baseline of where
Real quick, Phil, can you move the mic just a little bit closer?
that's
There you
a
go.
good baseline to where I don't call myself a politician. So I was a teacher, became a military member. My military career took over. I'm an administrator, farmer. And when I came out of my last set of orders, I was doing a lot of follow the money work. And I was one of the original whistleblowers for the daycare fraud. And so I made a promise to some special operators and some people that were doing some pretty sophisticated stuff of going after people who were funding terrorism. And one of the things that we discovered and we started briefing leadership on was how bad things were in Minnesota. And I'm getting back to our point here, but the baseline is why I got involved. I've always been interested in leadership, but that experience of chasing around bad people and how they're funding terrorism led to a pretty deep understanding of how what I call white collar criminals are at the baseline of all those activities. We'll fast forward into several multiple rabbit holes here with regards to USAID and stuff like that in a few minutes, I'm imagining. But the bottom line is I came back to Minnesota, back to my home after being overseas for nearly 11 years. And I was quite desperate to try and talk to people about what I knew. It was very hard to do that because of rules and confidentiality and clearance and stuff like that. But at the same time, you didn't need to be a brain surgeon to realize that that alleged daycare in the middle of a cornfield with 100 children in it doesn't exist. And when you run up against people who are saying, "Well, Commander Parrish, that can't be true," well, um, no, ma'am, no, sir, it is true, and you're funneling hundreds of millions of dollars through the Minneapolis St. Paul International Airport into the Netherlands and straight into the Huala network to fund terrorists and bad
What
people.
network was that? Let's
Huala.
okay, you're gonna have to bookmark that
Yeah,
and come back.
bookmark Huala. So, essentially, it led me to be more serious about how is this possible? What's really going on? So back to the parties, we can probably pontificate for hours about the globalist movement, the globalist structure, the ideology of the globalist um, idea. But at the end of the day, it comes down to people. There are people among us that have an agenda to buy and sell um, ideas, narratives, products that make them money. Period. They're not concerned about you and I. They're not concerned about Minnesotans. And so, unfortunately, the MNDFL has been so infiltrated and so controlled by the globalist network, the Soros type people, Tim Waltz and the connection to China. They have been so inundated with that structure, they have no way out. The MNDFL, in my personal view, is completely gone. My grandfather, Lloyd Parrish, was actually very important in the what would then be genuinely the farm labor, the Democratic Farm Labor Party, and he's back in the Hubert Humphrey era, and he would be very, very angry and disappointed with where things are. I was always leaning on that Republican side because from a young boy in constitutional class in high school, I became very tuned into the concept that we're a constitutional republic. So the word Democrat and constitutional republic at a very early age, 16, 17 years old, I was already formulating, well, this is really interesting. The principles of democracy, they can't exist without a constitutional republic, a rule of law. And so the MNDFL in Minnesota, that Democrat Farm Labor Party, has been so inundated with these policies of a globalist movement that it's just not it democracy doesn't even exist in the MNDFL, in my opinion. What has come out is what you introed with. We're living or suffering under the rule of communism here in Minnesota, and it truly is. It's hard for people to get their heads wrapped around. Well, communism, that doesn't make any sense. That's not what I was taught about in high school. Well, of course you weren't taught about that in high school because that's
That's that's a
that's a
good
whole
one.
other
I
subject,
like that.
right?
It's an education, another bookmark.
Right. So we'll get to all those. So I really got tuned in on what's really going on here. So I tried very, very hard. My first experience with the Minnesota Republican Party was Steve Swigum when I was in high school. Steve Swigum
That goes
became
back a ways, doesn't it?
back a ways, and it's a very good experience. I had a lot of good knowledge and experience of getting involved with the caucuses and getting involved with the process and leading up to a state convention at an early age. I've always been um, partial to that. But when I came back and I started running for governor in 2017 and into the 2018 cycle, and I was being that whistleblower for the daycare fraud and trying to educate people on what was really going on, I became more and more aware of a culture inside the party that it probably ranges from misguided,
We're talking about the Republican Party now.
Republican Party,
Okay, great.
misguided to malicious. So misguided, you're trying to deal with the information that you've either learned yourself or been told on the way into getting involved with the party. The other end of the spectrum, a very malicious intent of knowingly subverting the very rules that they put in place to guide the process. And then you have those alleged everything from backroom deals, to the accusations of people paying people off to people only doing it for money. And so that's what I learned in more depth, that my military career and chasing bad people and following the money became very, very applicable to analyzing the political spectrum of who's who in the arena. And so what has happened is the great majority of Minnesota Republicans are good-hearted, hardworking people that want to do the right thing for their community. But then there's this percentage that I call compromised, or it's a term that many people use, compromised in the sense of they're financially compromised, or they're morally compromised, or they're intellectually compromised. They really don't have any clue what they're doing. And so then you have this group of people that become somewhat malicious in their intent. They're just wanting to maintain their point of view, their way of doing business, and how dare you ever question them. So that has tainted the Republican Party to the point where the Republican Party has been struggling financially for a long time. And it's because people aren't stupid. They treat people like they're stupid, but people aren't stupid. The elite treat people like they're stupid. But they're smart enough to figure it out, and that's why they don't show up. They don't get to caucuses. They don't get involved. They don't get involved in the process. And then in the end, the Republican Party, knowingly or unknowingly, agreed to this when we started the whole primary process. And you can do the research and bore you to tears with all kinds of statistics about how the primary process infected or affected the grassroots system. The grassroots system essentially has been trying to exist and coexist with this primary process for a long time. And it has become so obvious, stepping back, forget about politics. I'm just a military analyst. Because I was also not just a counterterrorism specialist, but I was a foreign policy expert for Russia. And what you have is a situation where you've created a dynamic where the grassroots, genuine, hardworking people, they're trying to work through the process in a way that, well, something doesn't make sense here. And every time the grassroots kind of gets some footing,
Traction. Yeah.
they start to fall apart, and it's by design. Some of it happens by happenstance and disorganization or dysfunction, but some of it happens by design. So the primary process, the elite know they're going to use the primary process to cause dysfunction. So you get even through the endorsement process and even to the state convention where like statewide candidates are endorsed, then they're undermined by some of the very Republicans that are in the group of elite. And some of them are in the grassroots portion where they were fighting for their candidate and they feel like they were treated unfairly. So now after an endorsement convention, you have this set up fight all the way through to August in the primary. So then you have Republicans and anyone in the program, and God bless all Republicans here in Minnesota, that I would suggest most of them are going to they're knowledgeable of what I'm saying, but some of them are going to say, oh, Phil, you're just dividing the party. No, we're not dividing the party.
It's not. No.
We're exposing
Point.
the point. Yeah.
Point. That was my great revelation over the last couple of months, because when these, and I do agree with you that there is a group of controllers, for lack of a better word, controllers that are operating the power in the party, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I do think they're malicious, actually.
Yeah.
I was always being branded myself after a certain point as, being disunifying or, and I realize now in the last couple of weeks, they're talking about, well, this is related to the party going out after Action for Liberty. And I thought to myself, said, man, I don't have a litmus test.
Hmm.
I don't discredit a Republican because they are pro-abortion or they're for Nikki. I don't agree with them,
Hmm.
but I still want to unify together to get things done in the state.
Yeah.
And I realized from how I've been treated that the litmus test,
Mhm.
that the keeping the tent small, is from this group that's trying to maintain their control of the party.
Yeah, whether they're fully cooperating with what I would call a handler, and I know that sounds very vague to the public, but
Not to me.
to a handler that's telling them, "This is the candidate we want, this is the process we want, this is the agenda we want," and then these political elite that have been involved. If you go to a BPOU meeting, or you go to a congressional district or a Senate district, or you go to the state convention, I've been doing this since Steve Swigum. Believe it or not, some of the very same faces that I met back at Steve Swigum are the same
They're still
people
hanging
that
around.
that are
It's a
the
career.
central leadership of the GOP, and that's not bad. They're not bad people, but there's a paradigm that has to shift, and they're not shifting. So back to, and then I'm going to get on to the MNDFL because they're the ones that need the hammering. But to get to the real crux of this dysfunctional plan that, in my view, as a military analyst, is intentional, is that the primary endorsement convention after endorsement convention, kind of back to my earlier point of Republicans are going to argue with me all they want, but they can't deny one simple fact. Certain Republicans have set up primaried Republicans on purpose after the
They
endorsement convention.
After they've been endorsed.
Every single year. It's not hyperbole. It's not me just pontificating. It's a fact.
It's a historical fact.
So I had a conversation with leadership here a few months ago, and I said, I'm going to be very transparent about what I'm doing and how I'm running this campaign this year. And they listened, and they were polite, and we talked a little bit about endorsement versus primary, so on and so forth. And my bigger question then was, okay, you need to promise me that you're going to follow the endorsement. It's not about me following the endorsement. Is the leadership going to follow the endorsement? And they can't make that promise. And the reason they can't make that promise is because of good actors, bad actors, human nature. It's just a fact. You have a range of political spectrum that, whether we want to face it or not, which I believe this year we have to face this. We have to face this challenge of these endorsement convention at a statewide candidates. You get to the state convention and do endorsement, and then it all falls apart, and you go into having to fight for the primary. So my advice has been very clear. It took me a long time to get to this, but I've written about it several times, and I've talked to leadership about it, and several good legislators that I personally know now. I've talked to them about it. I've given my papers to them. You're at a point where you have to do something different. Interestingly, they tried to do something different, was shifting the endorsement and shifting the primary, and they started some legislation that fell apart. I don't know if you saw that.
I did.
So it's an effort, but at the end of the day, my advice to them was, when I wrote my research and I did my background and presented to them the data points as a military analyst, just a political analyst, how is this going to affect the next cycle, which is months away? It doesn't matter what they do now. They can't change it, because they can't change, no matter what legislation is in process right now. It's not going to change the 2026 election cycle, because to get to the point where the Secretary of State has all the mechanisms in place leading up to the timelines of filing timelines, primary timelines, printing of ballots, all of those things in place, they'd have to pass all the legislation today and have the governor sign it today to get everything in place for 2026. And it's not going to happen. So we have to, as Republicans, we have to start dealing with the fact that this endorsement convention concept and grassroots concept has purposely been undermined by the primary process. There's no way to change that. So, what I'm asking Republicans to do at all levels across the entire state is to start coping with the fact that you've been undermined on purpose. So, stop shooting at the wrong target and start aiming and shooting at the right target.
That's
Stop wasting your time and your money
good counsel.
on the wrong target. And that's the genius of the ill intent of those who have ill intent. The genius is they know you're wasting your time, your money, your efforts, your team, all the way up through endorsement, only then to have to regroup and refight to go to August in the primary. My advice to every Republican across the entire state is I'm not trying to tear the party apart. I'm not trying to tear the party down. I'm not trying to destroy the central leadership. I'm asking people to start dealing with this in a sensible way because Republicans, conservatives, independents, those who don't claim a party, they need a group of people to come together to develop some leadership and a standard that is sensible and winnable. And what they've been doing for a long time is not working, and it's not going to work again. It's going to fail again. If you don't approach it from a new path, a new battle plan, for lack of better words, we're not going to win. So my approach to this campaign is going to be very open and very gracious to good-hearted, good leaders in the Minnesota Republican Party. But I am not going to play the game of those who want to divide and discourage and cause anger and infighting and all these separate small groups all fighting against you. I'm just not going to participate in it. I'm not going to throw stones. I'm not going to throw arrows. I'm going to use a pretty good shield to shield off arrows. But we're going to get a message out there. And it's interesting, and this is probably a good lead into the website, parishformn.com. At first, I started publishing everything in December of just this last December. And I started getting a few, are you Republican? Are you Democrat? Are you Republican? But that was 1 in 100 people. And then I started seeing people in the comment fields start saying, well, what does it matter? Have you read the website? Did you read the opening line? Did you read the platform piece? Did you read the piece that he posted before you asked him that question? And what does that matter? So then now we've grown to the point where most of the comments are centered around, I'm a little confused. Is that a Republican agenda or a Democrat agenda? And so it's an interesting, I'm not laughing at it. It's heartening. It brings me a little bit of warmth in the sense that my analysis is somewhat true. The greater Minnesota, President Trump calls them 80% issues. 80% plus, they don't want boys in the girls' restroom. 80% plus don't believe in killing babies up to and after birth. And these things are about people. They're not about Republicans. They're not about Democrats. They're about people. And that leads us into the MNDFL. The MNDFL leadership is so intellectually and morally broken. I don't know how anyone really can associate with the MNDFL party and be okay with themselves, for lack of better ways to say it.
Let me just summarize something. I want to make sure I understand. What I heard you say, and I want you to correct me, is that there's a professional class of people that use the primary process to undermine the grassroots endorsing process. And your strategy from a military planning perspective, it's a stronghold and you're just going to bypass it.
Mhm.
You're going to go around it. You're not going to get caught up in it.
Mhm.
You're just going to stay out of that.
Yep.
And you're going to be respectful to all,
Mhm.
not looking to have that fight because that fight can't be solved because people that want to have that fight are paid to have it and they're going to have it, period. And you're going to say, nope, I don't want to get caught up in that.
Yep.
Kind of like the Maginot Line, you're going to go around it. And your goal is to be the governor of the state of Minnesota.
Correct.
And your idea is, if I'm hearing it correctly, is you're looking for the ideas for the platform that unifies without reference to party.
Mhm.
It's about the people.
Yep.
Is that a true statement?
That's
Am I getting it?
that is very good, and one of the points that you made, the paid part is critical on many different pieces of our political spectrum that has caused Minnesota harm that hopefully most people are starting to grapple with. Most Minnesotans are starting to grapple with, I believe, the fact that, like Minneapolis burning to the ground, was primarily paid activists, paid agitators. In the military, we would call them, um, you have special operators that are going into a community to destabilize them on purpose. And they've coined, the public and the compromised media has coined these people as just activists, but they're not.
Protesters.
They're actually protesters. They're actually militants, paid militants. It's like a mercenary army that has been effectively paid and inserted in to communities to destabilize communities and destroy narratives or push a narrative.
This is a very important thing you're talking about because we don't know each other,
Mhm.
but I also understand these things.
Mhm.
And uh, I just had a text message with a Republican Party officer coming in today. And, he's just triggered out of his mind and was pissed
Mm.
at me and said really mean things to me.
Mhm.
And I know him. He's a
Mhm.
friend of mine. I'd like to think of him as a friend. He does not understand what you're talking about.
Mhm.
See, what you're saying is there's a military frame of reference here
Mhm.
when you talk about the misguided citizens, not Republicans or Democrats, Minnesota citizens. It's so hard for people to wrap their minds around the very dire circumstance we're really in.
Mhm. Yep.
And so what you're saying is when we all wake up, you're saying people are starting to wake up to it. When we all wake up to this dire circumstance, Democrats and Republicans don't mean very much. Citizenship and activism and community start to mean something, maintaining our well-being as a
Yep.
community. And I'm going to tell you, I've been caught up in this fight because I've been trying to make progress for myself in the party, and I've been beaten down,
Mhm.
with an ugly stick. They just whipped me.
Yeah.
My home district is Alex Plekish's home district. So hey, if you're going to get in a fight with
Yeah.
the champion, that's tough road to hoe. But I found myself, and I'm going to tell you, and I think this is good for your well-being. I'm detoxifying myself
Mm.
from being involved in this fight. It's
Mm.
toxic.
Yeah.
This thing you're talking about sucks in energy and makes people unwell.
And that's where I was in the 2017, 2018 cycle. I was just determined to talk to people, but I became angry. I became frustrated. I became um, impatient with people. And you're right, it becomes toxic. And it took me a while to get through that 2017, 2018, even into the 2020 cycle. I was still in the background trying to do things in the party that was not effective. People weren't listening. And as I speak throughout the state, and I've been continuing to speak throughout the state for ever since 2017, I've been back and forth from every corner of Minnesota. It became more and more clear to me when I stepped back and removed the anger and removed the passion. I still have the passion, but it's more refined. It's more directed. It's more efficient in my passion to really go after the subject in a way that makes a difference. And that's what you're referring to. I think part of what you're referring to is that this approach is going to be, I believe, in my analysis and my practice every day, going after the people that aren't right and left. They aren't red and blue. They're just common sense people that are trying to get through the day, and they want some leadership and to know that somebody has their back. And so getting away from that toxic stuff and getting away from those toxic actors, to your point, more specifically, some of the particular meetings that we have in the GOP, it's so focused. I don't even like the term GOP, by the way. It's so focused on this angry, agitating, particular agenda they want that they never get a chance to talk about and you just get attacked because you're not listening to them or you're not agreeing with them. So you never get a chance to talk about the leadership stuff, the big picture stuff that's going to make the difference for Minnesotans, the people that I call the hardworking poor and the hardworking middle class that are so ignored in Minnesota by both parties. Um, Again, I believe it's with intent because the leadership at the highest levels, they're not stupid. They know what I'm saying is the truth. And that's part of why I've gotten a lot of traction over the years is because even when Phil Parrish came and he said so and so, within a day or two, within a month or two, within 6 months, now what we're in 2025 and what was I saying in 2017? You know, how many years later? Oh my gosh. I have legislators and friends in legislation right now, some on both parties that are saying, "Oh, for crying out loud, Phil was right." What the heck? What are we gonna do now? And and when they see the reporting from USAID, when they see what what Doge is exposing with regards to Social Security numbers, those of us that have been telling people about the fact that our voter rolls are compromised, our voting system is compromised, are the fraud in Minnesota. I've been saying for 10 years, Minnesota is ground zero for white collar criminal fraud schemes. We are the capital
We're the
of the
we're the
entire nation.
we're the incubator
We're
of
the
the whole
incubator
program
of the
right here, baby.
entire white collar criminal
That's it.
fraud scheme.
They tried it
network.
out here and they've taken it national. And interestingly, had Michael Broadcorp's endorsement succeeded and we would have had Harris Waltz, Amy Klobuchar, who almost never sponsors substantive legislation. Like she has a bill beautifying the Lake Superior Lakeshore, or we need more air traffic controllers in small airports. I mean, she's really good at what she does, but she had sponsored a very long bill that federalized elections.
Mm.
And I started, I read the bills, and and it was about it. And I go, I don't have to read any more of this. It's Minnesota.
Mm.
And they've got that thing queued up there
Mm.
if they ever get back into control.
Mm-hmm.
So, Mark Elias started in Minnesota. I mean, we really don't understand Minnesota. We
Right.
just don't understand it. And I'm going to tell you why I understand it. You said your father was big in the Democratic Party?
My grandfather.
Grandfather?
Yeah.
My mother was.
Mm.
So when you grow up with that kind of a background and then you know.
Yeah.
And I want to just touch on something why, again, Phil and I had no idea what Phil was going to say. We didn't talk about it and we barely know each other. But Phil, you've said something that I really want to get through to the audience. You're taking a military frame to this
Mm.
because we're in a military situation. That's a reasonable comment, isn't it?
It is very reasonable. And that's essentially going from the 2017, 2018 cycle to where I'm at today. I gave myself a break. I took off all that crusty armor and I just started looking at it. Okay, let's analyze the problem. What do I have to do to keep men and women safe when we go into a particular situation? My job was my teams that I worked on, our job was to keep people safe. And in the end was to have our people, not just our people not get killed, but not killing people that weren't supposed to be, that were innocent. And so when you do that level of expert analysis and research, it leads to a level of skills and development that are more applicable to our political spectrum here in Minnesota than I ever could have imagined. But now I've given myself permission to step back and to not listen to certain pundits. I've identified through experience who the particular voices are of ill intent, who the ones are just so, misled that I
Chaos agents.
and just focus on so that military tactic of analyzing the battlefield. You're correct, because we are in a battle. It's soft warfare. People watch movies and they think of the old days of ground fighting, and people still get turned on by movies of old guys on horses with swords and armor. Those things are easy for people to analyze and picture in their mind about good people and bad people. The more prevalent part of my career I would rather be on the battlefield with two people pointing guns at each other than to be in the battlefield with a white collar criminal, because my ability to analyze and research and dig into the person of ill intent that's wearing a suit and tie, um, it used to be very hard, but it's become a science to me, and and I'm good at it. And so that's why I'm going to be good at fighting. One of the primary parts of the campaign is about combating fraud, ending fraud in Minnesota. And I've gotten very good at it. Doge is doing the right thing. I've worked with people that have done stuff like that for decades. And we have done stuff like that both overseas and in the United States with regards to our military planning. But those same principles are applicable here in Minnesota because we are in a war. It is a communist war. It is a socialist war. And they have been waging this soft warfare for decades. And now with what's been exposed, and hopefully more and more people, if Elon Musk hadn't saved Twitter and now call it X and given us a platform where we could actually speak and not be shut down every time we said an unapproved word, um, we would be just as bad or worse than we were. But now we have some hope. We have some hope that programs like this the platforms like X, we have some hope to talk about the truth about what's going on and not have the elite shut us off because we aren't approving with the message or we aren't following along with the.
You said something, I just want to comment on it. Free People Radio, we get a lot of views, and Professor Penn podcast is growing. We're growing quite quickly. But in the great scheme of things, it's not even yet a pimple on Buffalo's ass. I'd like it to be, but that's not up to me.
Mhm.
Why do I do it? There are people that listen. And if there's one person,
Mm.
I went into my CD3 convention and I said, if there's two people in here, it's
Mhm.
not about winning.
Mm.
If there's two people that I can bring the information that we're in World War III,
Mhm.
and we can't keep doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. We've got to come up with a new strategy and a new tactic, which, of course, you've come in and said, I've got a new strategy and I've got new tactics.
Yeah.
And I've been saying on X constantly, and, I'm not running for office, and now I'm spit out of the party. And I've been saying to the elected representatives, you don't need a legislation to expose fraud. You need courage.
Mhm.
So there's a woman that I've been following. People tell me she's this, that, doesn't. So it doesn't matter to me. I don't know her. And you got to stab me in the back before I don't like you.
Mhm.
I mean, we don't have to agree. Just don't lie to me.
Right.
So her name's Marion O'Neill, and she's in 29B. And she put up a post of her in session, in committee, talking about the University of Minnesota.
Mm.
And she said there was, I think, over 2,000 people there that made more money than the governor.
Mm.
So here's one of my favorites because it's the University of Minnesota.
Mhm.
We spend more money in this country, and they're talking about this with the Medicaid thing they're making at the end of the world. Actually, all they're doing is cutting down on the fraud, waste, and abuse in Medicaid. But but that being said, we spend more money on medical research than any country in the world. And they sit there, and Amy Klobuchar brags about it. We got the best drugs,
Mm.
the best medical devices, the best medical research. We got the best this, the best that.
Mhm.
Right here in Minnesota, Mayo Clinic, University of Minnesota, the best. We're 48th
Mhm.
in the world in life expectancy.
Mhm.
So we might have the best research infrastructure,
Right.
but the benefit to that lower and middle class citizen that we are here to represent in the social compact between leader and the constituents, it's not working.
Right.
And that's a big one, right? At
Right.
the university?
Yep. And this sounds a little bit big picture, but one of the things I believe our public has to start grappling with is two basic concepts. And trust me, just bear with me. It leads to how we develop a strategy to solve the problem. What are the two most profitable industries in the world?
Are you asking a question?
Death and,
Military.
death and illness.
Yeah. The area of our government that has broad bipartisan consensus, military expenditure, healthcare expenditure, We talk about that a lot here. Please
So the
proceed.
next thing you have to start grappling with is if you can agree, and whether you're Republican, Democrat, whoever, whatever party you claim to be or don't claim to be from any party, you can grapple with the fact that 90% plus are going to agree death and illness are the most profitable industries on earth. Now you have to allow yourself to think about your human condition. Would you, if you were in charge of a particular company that benefited from more prescriptions or more drugs or more this or more that, would you allow your moral and intellectual integrity to be put aside and we're just making a little bit of money? What are we really doing? What's really the harm? So this leads to then this white collar criminal industry of, it's no big deal. It's just a few dollars. It's just a few prescriptions. It's just a few ads on TV that who are they really harming? But at the end of the day, you're talking about people buying into concepts, green energy, New Deal, that everybody's going to die of this virus that isn't really a virus. It's a man-made bioweapon. All of these different subjects, you can apply these basic principles to. Why was Tim Walz so compromised that he pushed a protocol that killed more people than the virus itself? Why would Tim Walz do that? Why would any human being do that? And once you allow yourself to step back from the noise and start asking yourself these basic questions about our human condition and how people get involved in this stuff, the world will start to make more sense. So what we have is a situation where I want to unplug us from this network of lies that we've been sold, everything from energy to healthcare to military involvement in certain things. I want to unplug us from that and start asking people to ask themselves basic questions. How did we get there? Why would a person like Tim Walz, or why would any person advocate for protocols that killed more people than the alleged virus itself? And if you don't know what I mean by that, we can go into it. But the bottom line is you have to start grappling with the human condition and start asking yourself, are you really willing to make money to the tune of destroying people? Is that really how you're going to make money? If you start, I know that sounds really ambiguous and big picture thing, but it comes down to the root of why Minnesota has so much problem with fraud and so much problem with our compromised press, because everybody's trying to sell a product or sell a narrative that they get paid for. So again, we're back to the paid militants. These people are paid. Tim Walz is paid to stand on stage and tell you ridiculous stuff that he has said in the last few months. If he's not getting paid, then I have to redo my analysis and start thinking about there is another portion of this, and there's good and evil. Evil does exist in this world, period.
This is a very important point. We talk about that a lot on the podcast. I was taught all kinds of religious concepts growing up. I was raised in a religious home. Nobody talked about evil. It took me pretty much my entire adult life, even though I had really intense experiences, as have you, even seen things that were life-altering. I mean, post-traumatic stress disorder type events. I mean, I just spent the whole night awake Wednesday night, couldn't sleep all night. No, Tuesday night. Couldn't sleep the entire night. Stuff that still bothers me to this day, but I never really looked at it as it's evil. And what's happening now, I think, because the people, for whatever reason, I mean, I'm not here to comment on the human will. That's a God-given free will. That's baked into the whole thing of what it is to have a republic. We elected a president who I say is the great unmasker. He's unmasking these evils like the press, enemy of the people, like now these leftist judges. Rule of law. Okay, it's great if there's sacred honor in it, but if it's used as a club to enact this globalist agenda, and they say, well, it's the system. Well, the system's broken. That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Did I hear you say that?
Yeah.
So then within the system, you're running for governor of the state. So we've talked, I think, enough without getting super specific. You mentioned USAID and the fraud. What does the governor of the state okay, I'm gonna leave out the fact that you're gonna get endorsed and then you're gonna get primaried. Okay, and you're gonna just bypass that and talk to the people. You're not gonna get mad. You're not gonna get caught up in it. You know what's coming.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Okay,
It's a good
great.
way to put it.
I like that. You're gonna stay focused on the DFL. And
Right.
we're not gonna worry about these DFL supporters here. They're not the real issue. You're not running against them. You're running against whoever they put up. I
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I
Okay, now
can
yes.
I just wanna jump in before we move too far because I've heard this before, the Tim Walz, protocol that killed more people than the virus. Can you go into that a little bit? Because 'Cause I've heard that, but I never understand what.
Yeah, so it's good. There's a lot of advantage in hindsight, and it might embarrass people, the hindsight, especially surrounding ivermectin. But remdesivir, we knew remdesivir killed people at a 50 to 52% death rate of just using remdesivir, period.
Which was an
Regard
antiviral drug which was administered to hospital-admitted COVID patients,
Really?
and they knew I mean, it was known that it killed people.
Yeah.
Ooh.
So it was research and evidence and trusted evidence for many years that remdesivir is gonna shut down the organ function of 50 to 52% of
So it's almost a 50-50 shot.
right.
Oh, man.
So Tim Walz and the MNDFL and, essentially the entire structure of the Walz administration enforced protocols at hospitals and nursing homes and urgent care centers that, um, people died because of the protocols. I'll use my wife as an example, and it's not just my wife. I've had calls, hundreds of emails. "Phil, I want some justice. Phil, will you please hold somebody accountable?" Um, it's the same story, and it's proof in why the protocols actually killed people. So for my wife, for example, and you can apply this to tens of thousands, s Scott, Dr. Scott Jensen can speak about the same thing. The fact is, what my wife went to the hospital for the first time she went to the hospital, in any other time in history, she would have been immediately treated for pneumonia.
Mhm.
Immediately. Wouldn't even have been a question. But because they changed the oxygen level, protocol as to what was serious and what wasn't, they simply got her in the door, took an oxygen level test, asked a few questions, sent her home. Within a few days, she's back in the emergency room. Still, because of the new protocols and the new guidelines, she wasn't admitted. Not admitted because of the new protocols. And even nurses are kind of like with my wife, aggravated and angry that they're sending her home. Send her home. Third trip in, now her oxygen levels are at the point where um, there's now it's into the threshold of the new protocols. So now you're admitted. So then, and thank goodness for the nurses in when she got transferred from Faribault to Cannon Falls. Thank goodness the nurses in Cannon Falls. In my opinion, I can't prove it, but the nurses in Cannon Falls, um, they stopped following the protocol. I wanna be careful how I say that because I can't prove any of that, but
Mhm.
something changed while Victoria was in the hospital, and they started doing something different because all of it she was within hours. The last phone call I got was within an hour of putting her on an intubator, and she would have died. We know as proof from all the
Almost
evidence.
all the people that they intubated died.
And so she was that close to really being killed. And I mean that in every word sense of the word. And there's lawsuits right now that are still out there against Tim Walz and his protocols. I hope some of those lawsuits finally come to the surface with Keith Ellison in office. I don't know if there's any hope of that because he's so compromised that it's very aggravating. But at the end of the day, Victoria is not alone. Thousands of men and women in Minnesota barely escaped with their lives because of those protocols. But even worse, tens of thousands died because of the protocols that they enforced. and forced upon the hospitals and fired people. One of the persons on my team is actually a former nurse because she left. I can't do this. She just got up and left. Um, so that hopefully that answers your
Yeah,
question.
no, it does.
And
So
there was other things too, like, there was, a movement to put COVID-infected patients into nursing homes where the COVID disease, and this was done in a lot of states where, at the early part of the, epidemic, there was a lot of domiciling the infected with the most vulnerable citizens in the state, which we'd have these nursing homes where it would spread the nursing home and kill a very large percentage of those older people. They just killed them off. I mean,
uh,
and I don't have any 8 by 10 glossies. I don't know. But, some of these things just go counter to what a medical doctor would do.
So even if you take the moments in time where here we're in the moment, we're doing the best we can to deal with the information we have, even if you can kind of forgive and put that aside from what the Waltz administration did, when you fast forward into all the evidence we have now, and you're still standing on stage, doubling down, tripling down on what I, that's not a good person. That's a person of evil, and that's a person of intent.
yeah, it seems like he almost knew exactly what he was doing when he made that protocol then if he's doubling down.
Well, that remdesivir was given all over the country.
Mhm.
Many states had this thing where they put these sick people in the nursing homes. That was pretty sketchy, to be
Mhm.
nice about it.
Well, what they did is they immediately started a process of, oh, the hospitals, they started a false narrative. The hospitals are all full. They even, the false narrative is so bad that they even bought, I don't remember how many millions of dollars, they bought a building to basically start a morgue.
Oh,
A
that was
ma-
in Minnesota?
yeah.
What?
Tim Walt's administration bought a building and started ginning it up for mass casualty morgue.
Oh my
And they
gosh.
spent millions of dollars on this mass casualty morgue, which turns out now in hindsight, literally a boondoggle, literally a money laundering scheme
Yeah.
to build this, so proof in the pudding, how many buildings have been shut down in DC now because they've been completely empty and they were empty before all of this started?
And they're going to sell them off.
And millions, there were people, they were walking into buildings where millions of dollars are being spent on buildings and there's like 6 or 7 people working in the building.
Yeah.
It's, you know, those are the white, again, back to my military tactic of I'd rather be on a battlefield staring at a guy or a gal with a weapon than dealing with the white collar criminals.
That's a big problem. Everybody wears these suits, the
Mhm.
costume
Mm.
of
Mm.
competency.
Mhm. Right?
And that's why I've said this many times. It'd be better off if these people just put Mao jackets on. We could identify them,
Mm.
but you can't identify them when they're dressed.
Asymmetric warfare.
That's the word for it.
Asymmetric warfare and soft warfare.
So it's a new kind of warfare. We talk about it a lot. And like in my home, where's the bombs, honey? It's not about bombs yet. But if you were living on a line that stretches from the Ukraine all the way down to Yemen, oh, it's game on there, World War III.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
that kind of thing has a tendency to spread,
Mm.
which is why I'm involved in the podcast and politics. And that's a good question. And I think it's probably hard for younger people. How can
Well,
they get their minds wrapped around that this is the people that they're electing to protect them?
like you said, you've heard that before, and so you clearly have tuned in on that a few times.
Yeah, I've heard it. I just never understood it.
And so, but what's interesting to your point is that it's not that younger. It's not about age. I think you're right about your assertion that younger people are looking at life in a different paradigm than I'm nearly 60, and so my paradigm has shifted a lot. But some of these things transcend age, where you sit back and you say to yourself, something not quite right here. But then giving yourself permission to start grappling with the fact that somebody could be that. I'll tell you a short story, which is a sidebar.
Okay.
My first year teaching, oh my goodness, I was spending so much time. Don't do that. Don't do that. Sit down here. Take this away. Take that away. Try to classroom management, behavior management. Custodian walked in one day and said, Phil, My second year there, I think. His name was Wayne. Wayne walks in and says, "You know, it particular child's name, I can't even remember the child's name. He's planning out every day how to get at you. You understand that, right?" "Oh, Wayne, stop it. People don't do that. That's no, Phil, I'm telling you, that young man, I know him. He's planning out before he gets to your room how he's going to mess with you." "Oh, Wayne, come on." My third year's teach my third year teaching. "Okay, Wayne, God bless you, man. You were right the whole time." But I know it seems like a simple, fun story, but that's basically the human condition at play in the larger audience. That one kid out of a I was a music teacher, so I saw K through 12 music, and that one kid in the high school band, he's one in how many kids I seen in per day. I was seeing hundreds of kids, so he's one in 100, but he was making my entire day of life a nightmare.
Wait a
'Cause
second, you were teaching music?
oh my goodness, yes,
What
it's a
is your
secret.
I
Don't
what
tell anybody.
no, wait a second.
Right.
What's your instrument? Do you
Oh,
have an instrument?
I taught music, for, 13 years. I taught K through 12 music. I have a major in voice. I have a major in tuba. I have a minor in piano and a minor in clarinet. I I would
You're a
walk
really
I
well-disciplined
would
man.
I walk into to a meeting and they'd be, "Oh, there's the new PE teacher."
Can I
Do I
get
dare tell them I was a music
wait, slow
teacher?
down, slow down. You taught and then you went into military
Yeah,
service?
so I have a very
We have some
so
we have some things in common, Mr.
I came out
Parrish.
of high school going into college as a business major, but because of being involved in sports and music, all of a sudden I went to MSU, then Mankato State University, now Minnesota State. And I got scholarships in voice and tuba and so on and so forth, and all these scholarships they wanted to offer. And the next thing I knew, my advisor from the business department went away, and I walked in and I got handed this sheet of paper at the registration office. "Here's your new advisor and here's your courses." "What?" And the next thing I know, the chair of the music department is my advisor. And so
Are
and
you
so
are you still singing?
I still sing. I
You
still write a
ch
lot of music.
Really?
I compose and write and sing, and I sing. I'm the executive administrator of Divine Mercy Catholic Churches and Schools, and I still sing periodically on Sundays and stuff. But I went to school to be a business major, ended up being a teacher, ended up teaching for 13 years, was kind of following the rules and being the good son. And then all of a sudden, I had some tragedy in my life, and I thought, you know what? I'm not going to be opposition defiant, but I'm going to start doing my life my way because I got talked out of being in the military in college, and I was looking for a new direction. I wasn't quite happy with teaching, and the reserves were running a program, and I put my hand up and said, "Hey, I want to look into this." Next thing I knew, I came into the military as a reservist, as an intelligence specialist, and advanced pay grade they called it because of my education. Got into the military that way, but then 9/11 had happened, and next thing I knew, I'm deployed, and next thing I knew, involved with crazy stuff that I thought was at the time crazy stuff, human collections management. So I was working with all kinds of DIA people and army guys and gals that were out clandestine gathering information and
For the Minnesotans, I'm gonna go out on a limb
yeah.
here. I'm gonna see if this works,
Okay.
Phil.
So,
So here's what I've heard. Phil,
mhm,
uh, is a farmer,
mhm,
which means he understands ag policy.
mhm,
He was a teacher, which means he understands education.
mhm,
He served in the military, which means he understands military matters and military procurement.
mhm,
Uh, he's a musician, which means he understands creativity.
mhm,
And I'm going to make a statement because again, we don't know each other,
mhm,
but I went through my life and I've done all these different things in my life. Some of them crazy
mhm,
things, right? And I had all these experiences, and I got into my 50s, and I'm thinking, what does this all mean?
mhm,
I mean, why did you do this? And why did you do that? And how does that, your life is a mess, dude. This is me criticizing myself,
Right,
like,
right.
what did this all mean? This is for nothing. And then I woke up one day and I realized I'd been prepared for a time such as this.
Right.
And I feel that in you. And I'm going to ask you directly,
Mm.
does that resonate with you, what I'm saying?
Absolutely. So when I woke up, I've been in and out of the political arena in many different ways trying to make a difference. But in October, November of this last year, and we're looking at the 2026 election cycle, I woke up one morning and said, Vic, I said, I know you don't, I call her Victoria. I know you don't like the political arena. I know you don't like politics. I know you don't like running for office, but Vicky, I've got no other choice. She's like, Phil, come on. Are you really going to try to do this again? But I said, Vicky, there's no other choice. Look at what they almost did to you. Look at what they're doing to our children and our grandchildren. Look at what these, and when I say they, I mean these people that actually have ill intent.
Oh, they have names.
Yeah.
We know their names.
We know their names.
We know who they are.
And so, Vicky, is it any other choice? To your point, look at what I have done with my life. I made promises to special operators coming out of my last set of orders out of Washington, D.C. I was in Crystal City working with a special task force. I thought I was on my way to Syria. The joke is, did I fail the psych eval or did I pass the psych eval? I didn't end up in Syria. I ended up in D.C.
Hey, guess what? It was announced yesterday. We're drawing down in Syria.
Yeah.
Just yesterday.
And so I'm in this situation where I'm just a small town boy from nowhere. I was born under a rock.
Were you born in
Minnesota.
Canyon?
I was born in Blue Earth, Minnesota, believe it or not.
Okay.
Oh, that's where my grandma's from. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Blue Earth, Minnesota. Spent most of my life in the Owatonna, Medford, West Concord area. And so when I look back at my life, it was hard for me as a young person to be boastful. I was taught not to be boastful. How dare you be arrogant? Go sit down, Phil. But I look back at my life and I'm nearly 60 years old and I've been in the political arena enough and I know enough of these people that are in legislative roles now. I mean, no insult to them, but okay, stop treating me like I'm this stupid kid from Kenyon or stupid kid from West Concord. No, I'm a 60-year-old man who's been there, done that, seen it, lived it, and you aren't going to tell me what to do anymore. I'm not listening to your advice. Your advice hasn't been working. So, yeah, I have some street cred. I have some, when I walk on the court or so-called court or analogy of arena, I walk in the arena now, it's not the same person as even 4 years ago. I walk in the arena now, I'm telling you, you're going to have a hard time messing with me.
Well, I'm going to say for the debates and for all of the policy issues, you're still farming right now. So
Yeah, I am.
Are you farming? What?
So we have a 115-acre farm. About half of it is tillable acreage. We have beef cattle that we raise for ourselves and a few customers. We have chickens that we raise for ourselves and a few customers. The tillable portion I rent out because I don't have a need anymore to be. I love being on the tractor. I'm just a little kid at heart and just a big body. You put me in a tractor and turn me loose with a plow or something, and I'll stay out there till
Can I have a sidebar question?
Yeah.
Sidebar.
Mm.
Do you happen to know somebody in your backyard named Brian Van Gorp?
I recognize Van Gorp. I have to try to put a picture of a
Okay,
face
no, we
with it,
don't
but
have to take a lot of time with it because I know somebody really well
Mm.
from in your area, and he's a large animal veterinarian.
Oh,
And when you said you had that herd,
yeah.
I thought maybe we're old time friends.
Oh, good.
Anyhow, what I'm hearing for the audience, we got somebody that understands ag policy,
Mm.
doesn't talk about ag policy, lives it,
Mm.
understands it, right?
Right.
Taught.
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah.
I mean, these are two really fundamental issues for Minnesota, aren't they?
I've raised more pigs and more cattle than probably 90% of the population.
Well, probably 99%. That's great. And then you have this military experience, which allows you to think strategically
Yep.
and quite, you're quite aware of what we're going through. So
Yes.
what I want to get to in the time that's left, and I think you're going to have to come back if you'll come back,
Yeah.
because I'm having a great time getting to know.
Perfect.
I had no idea. I was sitting at home last night thinking, what if Phil and I don't get along?
I think you guys are friends now.
Yeah, we're well, I had no idea. We only really talked once or
Mm.
twice
Yeah.
for a minute or two.
Yeah.
But I do want to. I mean, what the hell does a governor do?
Mm.
And what can a governor do in this asymmetrical war that's being waged everywhere in the world?
Set the tone. Set the tone, set the culture. One of the biggest points on my website, parishformn.com, is talking about a code of conduct and bringing back a servant leadership culture, serving with integrity, unwavering integrity and dedication. We need leadership that'll sit there, stand there, walk throughout the state and say, this is correct, this isn't wrong. And you know you're wrong. Stop doing what you're doing, and it's going to stop now. I will do whatever I have to with whatever authorities I have as governor to stop certain behaviors or certain policies. But a lot of it has to come from the people, and the people need to know that they have somebody that has their back. So what the governor does is law enforcement is turning to a governor or an attorney general or other appointed officials from the governor. Hey, are you going to have my back if I stick my neck out here? And they need somebody that's going to stick their neck out and have their back. And in my view, for the last several decades, we have had nothing but fluffy, talking point, pre-programmed, scripted leaders that have no backbone. They have no policy. They have no real depth to them. They're just there to spew the goals and agendas of other um, handlers.
To make sure that the machine is perpetuated.
So what does the governor do? Sets the tone. What does the governor do at the end of the day? Signs or not signs legislation. Go back to the drawing board. Tim Walz could be doing an amazing job right now. There's an amazing opportunity right now in our legislation, being it so, somebody could say it's divided, but it's an opportunity where there's kind of this 50-50 split. I guarantee you there's some MNDFLers in there that are only following along because they're scared. They're only following along because they were told what to do. If they had a governor that walked in the room, Republican and Democrat, and said, okay, let's get to know you. Where do you stand on this? Where do you stand on that? And hey, by the way, did you realize you just both said the same thing? And I got your back. If you're going to stand on stage and talk about this, I've got your back. I'm going to back you up when you get on stage, and we're not going to listen to the compromised media. We're not going to listen to the agitators. Here's the policy. Here's why. Here's the rationale, and I've got your back. Police need to know that. Nurses need to know that. Educators need to know that. We have on the team several former teachers, a couple of nameless people on the team because they are currently teachers, um, who need somebody that's got their back. They know that what's going on in education is wrong, but they're scared and they can't walk away from it because their career and their livelihoods depend on it. And these are good people, but they got to have somebody that has their back. And to me, as arrogant as that might sound to some people, it doesn't sound arrogant at all to me because I have been there. I've done that.
Wait a
I've
second.
seen it.
Wait, I got to learn something from you. You're saying that having the courage to stand up for what's right
Mm.
sounds arrogant to some of the people. I mean, is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know what your experience is out in talking engagements and in the political structure, but oh, how dare you, Phil? Those kinds of attitudes get projected onto you. And I was maybe too susceptible to that in the past. And obviously money compromises people. And oh, do I dare go after this because it's going to mean I don't get that donation or I don't get that donation? I don't care anymore. I'm going to run this with money or without money. I don't care about particular donor of 100,000, 10,000, $200,000 or some super PAC. What I care about is not being compromised and having the courage. So it's twofold. You can't just have the courage. You actually have to have the ability to back it up. And there are some politicians that they've had the courage, but then they can't back it up because then they get something pulled out from under them. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah.
You know, I'm nearly 60. Um, you can't do a lot to me. I should be dead 3 times over. It's the grace of God that I'm even on the face of the planet still. That's a whole nother story, another chapter of life. You can't do much to me. You can't, if you try to hurt my children, you try to hurt my wife, it's all been done before. I've had a child abducted internationally, nearly lost a child at birth. Um, we've nearly lost grandchildren. Um, I nearly lost my wife. I've lived through horrible
A
things.
lot of miracles
I've
along the
lived
road
through
there.
horrible, horrible things that drive that passion, and I have them in a better place now to motivate me. But it's part of why you can't hurt me. You can't take it away from me anymore.
Well, of course, what you're saying is something quite interesting because I think a lot of the delegates in the party are going to resonate with you.
Right.
And what you're going to say, instead of arguing with the people that are going to seek to undermine you,
Mm-hmm.
you're going right to the people,
Right.
right to the people.
Yep.
And it doesn't take money to get to the people anymore. That's the beautiful thing about technology.
Right.
There's some real downsides to this digital technology, which we're not going to have time to talk about today, which quite frankly is deeply concerning to me.
Mm-hmm.
But right now we're talking, we're going to get this to a lot of people. And there's a lot more opportunities for you to do this. And it's becoming digital. The whole political process
Mm.
is becoming digital, which doesn't take a lot of money compared to the days gone by.
Right.
And your appeal is to the individual citizen.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter if they're Democrat or Republican.
Correct.
You're looking for just the common sense at a state level, what's right and what's wrong.
I'm
And let's not BS each other about it
Yeah,
anymore.
I'm looking to give the voice to people who they're getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning. They're busy until 6 or 7. They're barely getting time to see their kids, get to bed and start over again. I want to give a voice to those people because that's the people I've been. I went to bed hungry more than fed for nearly 7, 8 years as a young person in a broken home, in a broken community. And that voice, those people are beautiful people. They're hardworking, salt of the earth people, and they need a voice. The money can't speak anymore. The specialist or interest can't speak anymore. And you're right, the digital platforms, you'd be amazed. I talk to people once in a while. I'll have a strategist call me and not in the team because I've learned who's the good guys and who's the bad guys and gals. But the team I have right now are fully aware of how the reach that I have on Freedom Talk with Phil, the reach that I have on X, the reach that I have on my personal accounts and my professional accounts. I put out a post about Tim Waltz the other day. Um, I lost track. It was up in nearly into the 100,000 view mark. And that was all organic. I don't pay for posts much anymore. I used to. Once in a while, I'll promote a post like for an event. I have an event June 6th, town hall. Our first town hall is in Otana, Minnesota on June 6th, and I'm going to promote that. But I don't do much for paying for promotions. And so the proof in the pudding, even to the surprise of some of my inner circle team, they're like, I didn't know that, Phil. You're on TikTok? Yeah. You're on X and you have 2 X profiles and you have Facebook and you have Getter and you have all of these other social media accounts. Truth Social, I'm on Truth Social. The reach is insane.
Wait, as long as we're talking about this so we don't
Mhm.
screw this up, what is, and everybody, this is the classic.
Mm.
We got to start doing our research as citizens. We can't ignore this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
There's this great default. Donald Trump's the president. He's going to solve everything amongst Republicans. And if we don't get in there, nothing's going to get solved.
Right.
We're just at the front end
Right.
of making a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
This is a counterattack, to use a
Right.
military.
Yep, it is.
And we know it doesn't necessarily going to succeed. So what is your website, please?
Parrishformn.com. PARRISH, the number 4, MN.com.
And your handle on X?
It's Philip C. Parrish and Freedom Talk with Phil.
And then
Okay.
we'll have everything in the description, guys. So if you're wanting to find any of the information, just look down in the description, and we'll have links to all his socials
What
and
a
his
guy.
website.
Yep.
What a guy.
And
Well,
Gotcha.
to your point, the research piece, I really trying to advocate back to that kind of that change of paradigm and that change of heart. I'm not going to be angry. I'm not going to be just passion. It's going to be focused and trying to help people learn, because getting to that website and learning more about the idea of just going to a speaking engagements and just having a few short little sound bites is all wonderful and nice ideas. But at the end of the day, the hardworking people want some substance. They want some depth. Well, you can't do that in a 3-minute blurb on this or that engagement with a political arena. Okay, you have 3 minutes to speak at a convention. You have 3 minutes to speak, and how are you going
you're
to?
running for governor.
Yeah,
Here's 3 minutes.
yeah, yeah. So getting to the website and educating ourselves, because you're right, it is a reinsurgence or a pushback. It is a battle plan, and we have to educate ourselves because we're not being told the truth. The compromised media is not telling us the truth, and we have to go find it for ourselves.
Well, you said something about misguided Republicans, and that is a fertile group to work on
Mm,
because they're not bad people.
right.
I mean, they really are hardworking. They mean well.
Yep.
They want to have a kind of a Reagan Republicanism
Mm,
because a lot of them are that age or they're
mm,
children
right.
of people that came from that age. And they have a vision
Yep.
of the world that's set in that tone.
Yeah.
And they're good people.
Yep.
They really are good people. I mean, when I have my meetings and I'm going to say this more and more often because I've been branded now as a radical.
Mm, mm,
And I say to people all the time, hey, I voted for George W. Come
mm,
on,
mm.
just like you. You
Right.
know, I mean, I did. I wouldn't do
Yep.
it now.
Well, there's things that I learned in my political career because as I said, I got into this right after 9/11 or during 9/11, and what I knew at the time as my basis for, oh yeah, we got to do this, or oh yeah, no, that's bad. I look back and now my expertise now, wow, uh, it's just there's a lot of good people that get misguided by bad information. And until you start grappling with the fact that people are making money off of you, giving you bad information, um, and you start asking your own questions, everything from healthcare to military to business practices, if you don't start stepping back and asking yourself questions, we're not going to win the war.
Yeah, that has some pretty awful implications, doesn't it?
Mm.
You know, in my own life, I mean, I actually knew what was going on, but I got caught up in this paradigm of left versus right.
Hmm.
And because I just hadn't disconnected myself and recognized that it's really not about that.
And it's part of their battle plan. An ill-intended person expects us to do left and right, red and blue. They
The,
expect it
the
to be.
British were experts at this.
Mhm.
The Shias and Sunnis,
Mhm.
they drew those. I say, and I really truly believe this. And if anybody's been in this part of the world, these folks are not naturally going to hate each other at the level that they do. But you intentionally set people against each
Yeah.
other and then arm them,
Yeah.
they'll kill each
Yeah.
other.
You teach people to hate.
Right. And see, when we look at what's going on in our country, just go look at the violence in the Middle East because the same people, the same PhD anthropologists are creating the same results amongst our citizens. As I was saying, I just had a friend of mine really got ugly with me today.
Mhm.
He's so caught up in the hatred.
Mhm.
So I commend you for taking a step back because
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say is wasted energy.
Yeah.
You're focused on a mission.
Yeah.
And I want to say it back to you as a voter. You want to unite Minnesotans around what's right for people,
Mm.
what's healthy and well
Right.
for what brings about citizen well-being,
Mhm.
maximum freedom.
Yep.
Huh, I like that.
Yeah.
I really do like that.
Yeah.
And you're saying you're not going to sell out. Doesn't
Correct.
matter if you get money or not. You're getting the message out,
Yep.
and you're going to depend on the people to hear that message
Yep.
and get to know who you are.
Yep.
I think that's great. Now, when you're the governor, you said the idea is that you're setting the tone.
Mhm.
How would the tone or how do you make a transition from What is the current tone of our leadership here in the state right now, in your
They're
estimation?
not serving the people. You have to be on point in front of people, understanding that you are a servant to the people. Um, Tim Walz is not serving the people.
Who is he serving?
He's serving special interests, China, um, the big money, the globalists. He's disconnected from the reality of everyday citizen that's struggling. And you have to demonstrate the willingness to understand and be transparent about the fact that even in Minnesota here, we have similar issues that the federal government has discovered. Buildings that we're spending millions of dollars on that mean nothing to the people. An education department of education that has uh, the overhead in Minnesota for educational expense. I did some research a few years back. I'm imagining if I did the research again today, if we put every professional in education system in Minnesota in a classroom, you'd have a 1-to-3 to 1-to-5 ratio of adult to student ratio for education.
If the administrators went to teach, what
If
you're saying.
all the people in the bureaucracy got told, get out of this building, go to work. If you're not in a school district working with a child, you don't have a job. If every single educator and every administrator and every bureaucratic portion of the agency got told,
Teach.
you're going to a school district and you're going to go work with a child or you don't have a job. That's the kind of tone and leadership that needs to be demonstrating respect for the people paying taxes. You can't sit there in a building making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year
Compared to a teacher's salary, just as
compared
long
to
as we're here.
right.
Just lay it
And
out there.
You've never touched a child's life. You've never been in a classroom. You haven't been in a school district.
But you
for
have a
decades.
PhD. You have a PhD.
You haven't been in a school district for decades, regardless of your education.
And this
you're
person is
wondering
making,
why the
how much is this
education
person,
system's broken.
this administrator, how much money are they making? Would you say? If you picked it,
Principals are averaging, I would say, between $80,000 to $120,000 a year.
let's go upstream.
Superintendents are making $200,000 plus in many of the districts. The Department of Education that never touches a child, and somebody's going to in the Department of Education is going to argue with me. I have children. No, Department of Education sitting in your building in the middle of Minnesota with no contact with school districts or students, and you're making $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. I don't want to talk to you
And the
anymore.
music teacher at the Kenyon High School, what's that music teacher making?
Maybe making starting in a public school now, K-12 school. I haven't looked for a while, but I'm gonna guess it's starting in the 60s, high 50s, mid 60s.
So we got people that are doing something which is not related to teaching, making as much as $500,000 a year, and the person that's really in that room with those students,
Yep.
whose lives depend on that education.
And this is true at every level. This is true in construction. This is true in law enforcement. This is true in the medical industry. You have a bureaucracy built to sustain itself, while the nurses and the police officers and the guy putting bricks on a wall are somewhere downstream, eventually getting, a fraction of what the bureaucratic industry is getting, and the rules and regulations and all of the policies that have to be enforced. I mean, for crying out loud, you can't dig a ditch anymore now without going through a 6-month to a 18-month process, and bureaucrats that get paid hundreds of thousands of dollars a year to just, come back when you have the form filled out right. I mean, there's some common sense to this that just it's laughable, but yet very serious problem. And some of these problems just simply can be set from the tone from the governor's office. If you aren't doing something positive and productive for your community, you need to explain to me what you're doing. If you can't explain to me the value added to what you're doing, you probably shouldn't be there. And that money needs to be redirected to the people that are actually making a difference.
You're a little bit refreshing. I was going to say
Yeah.
sobering. I had all these
My
adjectives that
passion
were
was kind of coming out there, so forgive me.
well, no, because this is really you're talking about system-wide failure.
Mhm,
You're talking
mhm,
about systemic failure that
mhm.
goes far beyond
Correct,
Minnesota.
correct.
It is a um, over-reliance, overemphasis on Marxist education,
Right.
which turns out a bureaucratic administrative structure in every element of our society,
Yep.
aggregating money and power to people
Mhm.
that aren't really doing the deal.
Yep.
And they're actually ruling over the people that are doing the deal.
The
And
best
it, and they're actually impinging on their ability to get the job done.
the best people to talk to are the farmers, the small business owners, the guy and the gal putting a brick on a wall, the guy and the gal, trying to get the road construction done while everybody tries to drive over top of them. Those are the guys and gals, the law enforcement officer who's trying to get up in the morning and go do his or her particular, assignment that day. Those are the people to talk to. Those are the people that know what's going on. I'm the executive administrator of Divine Mercy Catholic Church and Schools. I don't spend time just talking to the leadership group or the Archdiocese. I spend most of my time talking to parents and students and parishioners and trying to figure out what the needs are and trying to readjust. I mean, we just got done building a 15 point, a $15 million, the details aren't important, but $15 million building for pre-K through 5. And that's impossible. You're never going to do that, Phil. But it was about communication, developing trust with people, proving that that trust was valid or worthy, and then following through and having the hard conversations where you had to have, yeah, no, that's a bad idea. And that's not gonna work, and, "Oh, we're not gonna build that grand castle. We're gonna build what works, and we're gonna build something for children and for teachers and for parents that is healthy and appropriate." Building some grand scheme that here's another fun story, just forgive for just a second, but I worked in a cheese plant for a while between
Yeah, you got all the history. This is crazy.
for between teaching jobs, and I was, in the quality control it was Mid-America Dairyman in Zumbrota, and, we had some systems changes and some new equipment brought in. Bear with the funny story. We're on the floor. We're looking at this equipment being delivered that had been planned for like a year, and some of us starting to look at the equipment and going, "That ain't gonna fit in here." And by the way, that elevator moving the cheese into that room where the shredders are you planning on moving the ceiling? Are you planning on and these people never got off their butt. The bureaucracy never got off their butt to come downstairs and measure. Oh, the ceiling is 12-foot limit high. Okay, we can't put that elevator that we just ordered and spent hundreds of
That's
thousands of
hilarious.
dollars on into that room because the room is 12 foot high. You could have built the elevator appropriately. You could have done it efficiently. Who did you need to talk to? You needed to come downstairs and talk to the men and women on the floor working the shredders, working at cutting open cheese and putting it on the conveyor. But did you ever do that? No. And what happens every time you fail to talk? I spent more time with the construction workers at the site building the new school actually talking about and working out engineers. God bless them. I didn't mean no harm to engineers. They're beautiful people. They have smart brains. They do a lot of good, but you put all the engineering plans together and then you put the bricklayer and the plumber and the electrician in the room and they're standing there going, you were planning on how were you planning on getting this from here to there? It ain't working. And so how many times does that happen? And some of that can't be avoided. But if you talk to the people that are really the smartest people I know aren't educated in colleges. The smartest people I know are farmers, uh, infantrymen and women, um, truck drivers, stewardess on a plane are as smart or smarter than the pilot, um, because they're seeing and hearing and feeling what's going on every day. And that's really the goal and the objective is to have those people to have a voice. That's my sole objective is to have those people have a voice and to do something. We aren't going to fix the world, and I'm not. And one of the things we've done wrong as society is we've put government as almost like a religion or as a god on high to do fixing of the world. It's never going to happen. You're never going to legislate right and wrong. You're never going to legislate a moral conscience or a intellectually sound. You're never going to legislate right and wrong. It's going to take people to stand up for what's right and to also say something's wrong and have the courage to say that's wrong. It's unhealthy and it's inappropriate. And it's talking to people and developing relationships. And I think that's something that's missing, both in our parties, both in our political spectrum, in the governor leadership. It's missing. They don't have actual genuine relationships, if that is a good way to
I
summarize.
think what you're saying is that the untapped resources of American citizens, the diminution of the people that didn't get that PhD,
Mm,
as if that PhD is, some kind of certificate of I'm smart.
right.
Nah, you're good at taking tests
Mhm.
and you're good at you might be smart. I'm not saying they're all dummies, but we don't need to be discrediting the everyday common sense of citizens that are trying to live moral, just lives.
My definition of intelligence is a person who can act and interact with their environment in a positive and productive way. Now that sounds really heady, maybe, but essentially,
Homeostasis, yeah.
but an intelligent person isn't about books and memorizing. It's about acting and interacting with your environment, your conditions in a positive and productive way. Because we're so far away from the ability of individual people and students, especially in education, to start figuring out how to cope with life rather than just how to get past life's challenges. No, the challenges aren't going to change. The challenges might even get worse. But learning how to cope with that and act and interact in a positive way that gets you from point A to point B, I don't know how that went wrong. Because when I was in high school and when I was first getting education to be a teacher, that was there. How, not what, how am I doing this? And I need to be concerned about how I'm doing it because it has ethical and moral implications on my life. Where did that go? And why? Why did it go? Well, we can look back and say, well, there was an agenda at work. But even for me, in my experience, I didn't really articulate that until the last 8, 10 years that I really started to articulate what happened to that. We were taught how, not what.
How to think.
And that was such a brilliant change in direction in education. Well,
No, it was no. We can admire evil.
yeah.
You can just say, "Wow, that was majestic."
Mm,
And I feel that way a lot lately. Like I go, "Wow, whoa,
yeah.
I don't know that humans are that smart." It seems a little supernatural to me the way this is all working
Yeah.
out. You know, it's been a great
Yep.
opportunity for you to come in. I hope you come back. I mean, there's so much policy to talk about.
Yep.
Ag policy is so important to come back and talk about ag policy. We're an ag export state. How does that fit in with the tariffs? All those kind of things. But what I think was cool about today is I got to know you.
Yeah.
And you know what? If we're going to elect people, I think we want to elect good people. I mean, the first step is to know who these folks
Yeah.
are, not who they want us to think
Correct.
they are.
Yep.
I'm not interested in their curated. I don't care about that blue suit and that white starched shirt and that tie and that American flag stick pin. It doesn't mean anything anymore.
Yep.
It's kind of a caricature for me now
Good.
because those people brought us a $37 trillion debt,
Mm-hmm.
an open border, and an endless war.
Mm-hmm.
So, hey, you guys had your chance. It's time for the people.
And I think a lot of people are seeing that.
I hope so.
I think they are.
You're out
I
in the
believe
street,
they
you
are.
see it. Well, then we're going to have to round them up.
Yep.
Get them
will.
organized. That's
We will.
great. They need leadership, don't they?
They will. Yep.
Phil, it's great to meet you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for coming
Yep.
in, brother. I
Bless.
hope you come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tanner, thanks
Thanks,
very
Tanner.
much.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.